Yo, what's up everybody? It's Manga Mike here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about creating magic and or power systems for your shonen manga. So just to kind of kick off, I'm not going to be going into huge detail on the intricacies of creating the system. Rather, I am going to give you the guidelines in the beginning, and then I'm going to do like a couple of case studies on how to actually apply those things after you kind of created the structure of your magic or power system. Quick interruption. That video went on way longer than I thought it was. I thought it was only going to be like 17-15 minutes, somewhere in that range. It ended up being almost a half hour. But please stick around to the end because I do 3 case studies at the end. I'll keynote them in the bottom so that you can just kind of skip right to it if you would like to. But I do think that all of it is super important and will be very, very helpful in creating your own shonen battle manga power or magic system. So please watch all the way to the end. I can't guarantee that it'll make everything better for you, but it might. So why not try? Alright, I'll catch y'all later. So I'm going to link this in the description below, but there's this great article on this. It's right on Google. If you just look up like creating a power system or a magic system, it'll pop right up. It's like the first thing, at least for me. But it really did a great job of kind of synthesizing everything that I've seen into like one pretty good article. So it talks about like the questions or guidelines that you want to kind of think about as you're creating the system. So that will be point number 1. Define its use. So what I would like to think of this as is you need to think about what is meaningful to you in your life and then create a magic system based off of that, right? So if you really enjoy animals, for instance, maybe your magic system is based off of you're finding a magical or mythical creature that you bond with, and then that creature is now allowing you to kind of utilize different forms of magic or something along those lines. And then you're going to define your use based off of that. So is it going to be used for battle? Is it going to be used for advancement of technology? Is it going to be used for cooking? Whatever it's going to be actually used for, that's what you want to define the use off of. Number 2, identify the users. So are users everybody? Are they only particular people? Figuring that stuff out is important. Is it innate? Is it something that comes with our biology, or is it something that is kind of not innate, right? Number 3, outline the limitations. So general rule of thumb here is the more powerful the magic is, the more limited it should be, and it needs to have some kind of limitation to it. It can't be just you can just willy-nilly use all the magic that you want and there's no repercussions from it, because then there's it just doesn't really make sense within the story. And utilizing magic all the time for everything, and it has an unlimited range of power, it just doesn't, it's not going to really fit well with your story. People aren't going to be able to connect with it. So establish the dangers of that power system or of that magic system. Does the magic age the user? Does it create a craze in the user? Can it harm those around it, regardless of whether they are friend or foe? Can it incapacitate the user if it's used too frequently? Things of that nature are really important to kind of establish within your magic system. So that's the 4th thing that you should be thinking of, is establishing the dangers. Explore the origins. Who was the first person to ever use this magic? I kind of touched on this before, but is it natural or unnatural? Meaning, is it something that we're born with, or are we like injected with something, or does your cast like stumble upon it somehow? Does it require an item to channel it? Do you need like a wand? Do you need, like I said before in the example earlier, do you need like a mythical animal to be along your side? Do you have to read specific books? Things of that nature are really important. And the final point is to consider the culture of it, right? So like earlier, like I was saying, like is everybody a magic user, or only some people a magic user? Does the public know about it? Is it a secret? How do people react to it in general? If it's not everybody has the power, so what happens when people who don't have the power see people who do have the magic utilize it in public or just in general or in warfare or what have you? How do they react to that? Do people use it for everyday tasks? How do non-users feel about magic users? Those things are all of those things you want to be thinking about within your comic, and that will help you kind of develop your magic system in a way that is meaningful for you, but it's also going to connect with the viewers as well. So number 2, the bigger points is inputting it into your story. So I think that a lot of people kind of don't really necessarily understand how magic should be used in stories. Magic is a supplement, it's not a solve-all. So what I mean by that is that it shouldn't be a deus ex machina. It shouldn't be something that your main cast is really struggling with something, and then all of a sudden they just find in the last chapter this rare form of magic, and now they're able to defeat the big bad, right? Or now they're able to just solve this problem in something that hasn't been hinted at or foreshadowed at all in your comic. That's going to be a very unsatisfying ending, and that's not a proper way to utilize magic within your story. The second part of this is magic is the supporting cast of your main cast, meaning that it is something that supplements everything that's happening around the main cast of characters, and it supplements each individual character as a whole. I mean, this is kind of like what I was kind of hinting at in the first point that I just made about this, but it should be something that, for instance, like Bakugo, I think that his magic in My Hero is perfectly suited for him because he's an explosive character in his emotions, so it makes a lot of sense that his power is also very literally explosive, right? And everything about his character is kind of situated around these explosions, and how he utilizes that magic as well is extraordinarily important too, because that's really how he's able to make his magic so powerful within My Hero. And then the third point is it's a reflection of the user. So for instance, I can't remember his name in JoJo Part 4, but the guy that has the hand, right, as his stand. His magic is one of the stronger stands in the entire series, but he's such an idiot that he isn't able to actually utilize it properly. So he utilizes it for goofy things, and that's really just a reflection of him as a character, and his utilization of the magic isn't really just about the magic itself, but rather his emotions and his intellect and things of that nature. So those are the things that you really want to think of. Now, the second part, I'm going to be talking about 3 different studies of magic being utilized in stories, and they're all technically different genres. So I'm going to be talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventures Part 2 and Part 4. I'm going to talk about Dragon Ball Z, and then I'm also going to talk about Harry Potter, so stick with me. So let's go through JoJo's Part 2 and 4 first. So JoJo's is really unique because the magic system changes dramatically from Part 2 to Part 3. So Part 2 has Hamon, which is breathing magic. It's basically being able to generate this positive energy within you that's kind of regulated through your breathing, and then you kind of extrude that magic out, and it gets rid of evil beings, and in this case basically vampires. So let's look at this, look at Part 2 in particular with Joseph Joestar, and how the magic actually ended up not really impacting the story as much, right? So it's really, really important how they utilize Hamon in the beginning of the story, and how he utilizes it to defeat a lot of the bads, right? But it's never a situation in which it is more like way more powerful than the people that he is fighting against, right? If anything, I would say it's the exact opposite. The beings that he's fighting against are so much more powerful than him that he has to find new tactical ways to actually utilize Hamon in order to defeat these villains. So I don't want to spoil a whole bunch of stuff, but after Cars kind of evolves, it's actually completely useless. Like, it has no effect on Cars at all. So now it's just like he's even without the magic, which makes the stakes higher, and it makes it feel a little bit better when he does defeat Cars at the end, even though it's like absolutely ridiculous how it happens. But let's use the fight of Joseph Joestar versus AC/DC. So this fight is happening while Joseph is actually going through his training, right? And what ends up happening is Joseph sets a trap with the Hamon using string, right? He kind of supplants the Hamon into the string and sets a trap that way. But the fight is really, really interesting because he uses a new tactical way, because we've already seen in the series, and this is important too, but we've already seen in the series that Hamon can be kind of transferred into objects. I can't remember the dude's name off the top of my head, but he can kind of put it into bubbles, right? And that's kind of his like specialty in utilizing Hamon. And so it's not a huge surprise that Joseph Joestar is able to put it into string in such a creative way. But really the fight is about this like back and forth between Joseph and AC/DC, and it's really interesting how the fight actually ends up, because yes, he uses the magic to kind of solve a problem, but he wouldn't have been able to solve the problem without his own intellect. And that is how you kind of, if you go back to the previous points that I just said, that's how you use the magic or the power system to supplement your cast instead of having it take over your cast. You're not going to win over your audience or a huge group of individuals by just having a really cool magic system. It's great, but you have to have a really cool magic system that fits with your cast of characters that are also very interesting. So let's fast forward to part 4. So this is where stands are introduced. So stands are kind of defined as these out of body forms of magic that are kind of the embodiment of the personal characteristics of a particular character. So let's think about it in part 4 and use the case study of Jotaro versus the rat, actually. So Jotaro has this, he has basically the world, right, which is, it's Star Platinum, but he's also able to use the world. And Star Platinum already in itself is an extremely powerful stand. Very quick, very strong, able to punch things extraordinarily fast. It has a limited range, but then on top of it, he has the ability to stop time for a few seconds at a time, right? And then he goes against a rat. And the rat's power is, the rat has a stand as well, and the stand is able to kind of shoot out these like darts, and these darts are poisonous, and they can actually like kind of melt away the skin, and then the rat's able to kind of consume humans this way, which is kind of creepy. But Jotaro gets his butt whooped by this rat because the rat actually outsmarts him. The rat knows and figures out that Jotaro is able to stop time, so instead of shooting its darts directly at Jotaro, it actually shoots darts at a rock, and Jotaro stops time, and during that time period he moves out of the way of where the darts are, not thinking about the rock behind him, and then it bounces off the rock and hits Jotaro anyways. So basically the strongest character, I would say one of the strongest characters in the entire series, is outsmarted by a rat, right? And that makes it very interesting, right? It makes the magic system amazing because it's whoever can outsmart the other person and not necessarily whoever has the strongest stand. So let's go into Dragon Ball. So Dragon Ball kind of falls into this really bad cycle of characters are just super duper strong, and in order to beat that character, we just have to be stronger than that character, right? But Akira Toriyama was very aware of this, I think, as the series went on. So if we fast forward all the way to the Majin Buu saga, we get these characters that are obscenely strong, and in particular we get Majin Buu, right? And Majin Buu, after going through various transformations, ends up being Super Buu, and Super Buu gets to this point where he is so strong that it takes fusing, two characters fusing in order to properly fight against him. So we kind of get this like cheap trick in order to level the playing field a little bit because the villain has gotten too strong, and it still doesn't actually solve the problem. And I think that was the best thing that Akira Toriyama could have done with the fusions, right? The same could be said of Vegito. So first we get Gotenks that's fighting Super Buu, and then Super Buu absorbs both Gotenks and Gohan, and then we get Buhan or Super Buu or Gohan absorb, right? And Goku and Vegeta are just like totally outmatched, and they have to resort to fusion to try to level the playing field. So in this particular circumstance, it still doesn't, like, Vegito doesn't just defeat Buu and that's it. Vegito actually lets himself get absorbed so that he can go inside and free the others and then come back out, and now we get this fight with a defused Goku and Vegeta versus Kid Buu. That's probably the best fight in the series. In that particular saga, in my opinion, is the fight between Goku, Vegeta, and Kid Buu. And it's utilizing the same magic system that we all know and love, and not utilizing the fusions. The fusions were kind of just, really, you could have taken that whole part and just tossed it out, but the fusions were just a way to get to the end. How do we get this character to be at the right strength level for Goku and Vegeta to fight? Okay, well, we have to somehow get all of these beings that he's absorbed out of his system, including Majin, like Fat Buu himself, and get him out of there and see what happens next. And then we get this Kid Buu iteration, right? So with that being said, how you can use this cool magic, right, is to raise the stakes. So we get it's kind of a trope that gets used after the Frieza saga, which is the absorption of other entities in order to make the villains even more menacing, right? So first happens with Cell, then we get it with Buu, then we get I'm probably skipping some stuff here, but then we get like fused Zamasu, and then we get like Kefla, and then we get Moro, right? And all of those characters are using fusion in order to raise the stakes, and our heroes have to figure out ways in order to combat that. But that's why you get really bad endings of like some of the best arcs for Dragon Ball in general, where I would say the Goku Black arc is that, but that gets ruined because the power scaling is just way out of whack. He doesn't have like and I know a lot of people are probably going to criticize me for this, but there's not really a way to have the limitation on the power system, so it just escalates beyond reason, and that's what happened in that, right? And then we get a Deus Ex Machina that felt horrible, which is having Goku press the Zeno button, and Zeno just destroys everything, and it makes the entire saga just useless, right? So there's that, and then finally, we get probably, at least in my opinion, one of the best emotional fights in the series in Dragon Ball, which is Cell versus Gohan. So there's almost a Deus Ex Machina with Gohan transforming into Super Saiyan 2. And no other character has done that in the series, right? And he beats the crap out of Cell, but he doesn't actually kill him. He gets drunk with his own arrogance, and then Cell explodes, kills Goku, comes back just as strong as he was before. He fires a death beam at Vegeta, and Gohan jumps in front of it and becomes pretty injured and has to do this fight with Cell with one arm. And the scene with the Kamehameha would have been horrible if it was just Gohan still overpowering Cell, but really what happened is we get all these other people fighting against Cell too. And then this father-son Kamehameha between Gohan and Goku, where Goku is kind of rooting Gohan on and helping him break past this emotional barrier that he has, thus being able to defeat Cell while also taking up his new mantle as the savior of Earth. And the series was going to go in the direction of Gohan being the new hero. That's why that particular fight is loved by so many people. It's because of the emotional backdrop of it and not necessarily the actual power system itself. So now, I'm not an expert on this, but I do know a good portion about Harry Potter, and I do want to talk about that. And my main thing that I want to bring up with this is don't be afraid to learn from other mediums. Harry Potter is a fantastic story from start to finish about, magic and how it's almost like a master class in how to actually use magic in a way that's going to feel right. So, I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is with the first book, but I do know the first movie, Harry barely uses any spells at all, if any. So it's not something that he actually uses himself in order to overcome the villain at the end of that particular story, which is Voldemort on the back of a professor's head. So that is extraordinarily interesting within itself, but let's fast forward to the end and spoiler alerts. So we get this basically the search for the Deathly Hallows at the very, very end of the entire series, right? And then we have, Harry versus Voldemort at the very end, and Voldemort is trying to get a hold of the Elder Wand, and he finally does. But what he doesn't understand is that Dumbledore had it first. Malfoy actually ends up winning it from Dumbledore because of kind of getting the wand out of his hand via magic, and now the Elder Wand is looking at Malfoy as its actual rightful owner, because that's how you would get the wand in the first place, and be able to actually utilize it to its full potential. And then we get Harry, who actually unwands Malfoy during the chase that they have towards the end of the book. So really the rightful owner of the wand is Harry. But the reason why this is extraordinarily important is because Voldemort isn't able to use the wand to its full ability, which is why Harry is able to overcome him towards the end. Why do I bring this up? This is extraordinarily important because I think that she does a fantastic job of showing that a spell is introduced and shown as a possible way to solve a problem later on down the road. It is foreshadowed in the beginning of a lot of these books that this particular circumstance can actually happen, right? And this is what she does a great job of throughout the entirety of the books, is that she introduces a whole bunch of things in the beginning. Some of them are just kind of throwaway, but some of them are extraordinarily important, and our cast has to figure out a way to utilize what they have learned in school in order to overcome these obstacles as things go on. And this is what happens in all of these books, and that's why I think that people really enjoy the books. It's not just the magic itself, but it's the characters that we end up really, really enjoying as we go on. And then it's kind of the puzzle solving piece on both the characters' parts, but also on our part too. We almost become investigators. How could they, kind of solve this problem using the magic that we know of? And J.K. Rowling doesn't introduce anything else, at the very end or whatever to kind of patch up problems that she's having. I would argue in the first book that's probably true. It's a little bit of a deus ex machina that he's able to kind of win with the power of love. But she learns from that. In the other books, it doesn't really happen, and she actually goes back to try to explain some of what happened in the first book as well. Now, what I do want to say too is that while I'm using these particular circumstances in Harry Potter, I don't want people to think I also wholeheartedly support J.K. Rowling given all the stuff that's come out. So I want to put that out there as well. I'm just using her material that she created. But anyways, that is kind of my synopsis on what I have taken away from Magic and Power Systems and how you can use different genres because JoJo's is more seinen now than it is shonen. So that's different than Dragon Ball in itself, and then Harry Potter is a novel, right? It's a series of books. So it's totally different, but you can learn from all of those things, and in fact you should, right? Don't get stuck just thinking about and just kind of perseverating on just shonen. You need to branch out because you want to be able to get different ideas and how to make your comics a little bit more unique. You won't have a 100% unique comic, but you can do it the best that you possibly can and in a way that fits your own style. So anyways, I do hope that this was helpful. I know this is a pretty lengthy video, but I think that this is probably the most important thing to get right in your shonen battle manga, because if you get this wrong, you are going to lose viewers, right? People aren't going to find your comic interesting if your magic system is kind of bland, or it doesn't really fit emotionally with your cast of characters, or it's being used to solve all the problems without any real thought behind it. So I hope that this was helpful. And I had a great time making the video. If you have any other suggestions for videos like these that you might want to see in the future, please tell me. I will be going down my list that I made from the last video and kind of breaking down those things as we go. But anyways, I'm Manga Mike, and I'm out.